Good evening and welcome members, officers, honorary aldermen and any members of the public viewing at home to this evening's council meeting. Before we begin the meeting, I ask you to remain standing to join me in a moment's silence to remember all those affected by the conflict in Israel and in Palestinian territories. Please be seated. There is no fire drill planned for this evening. If the fire alarm sounds, please make your way from the chamber using either the fire escape to my right or via the stairwell that leads off from the lobby outside the chamber. Item 1, apologies for absence. Miss Willis, may I please have the apologies for absence?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I've received apologies from Councillor Mary Glowett, Councillor John Skipper, Councillor David Whitcroft and Councillor Helen Whitcroft, and Councillor McIntyre has advised that she will be late.
Thank you. Moving on to agenda item 2, I propose that the minutes of the meeting of the Council to be held on the 26th of July 2023 be approved as a correct record. Do I have a seconder?
Yes, I would like to second that.
Thank you. Is that agreed, members? Agreed. Agenda item 3. I'm advised that one question has been received from members of the public under Council Procedure Rule 10. Councillor Marr, would you like to come to the microphone to read out your question?
I am a Windlesham resident and Windlesham Village Councillor. Tonight, you will debate Councillor Wilson's motion about revisiting Windlesham's borough boundaries. As a result of the boundary decision to split Windlesham into two, its boundaries are misaligned at all three levels of local government. At county and borough level, Windlesham aligns with Chobham and Bagshot. At parish level, it aligns with Bagshot and Lightwater. Windlesham residents do not feel they were adequately consulted on this split. They're confused and feel that this has negatively impacted their representation. This confusion led to the CGR of 2019 and resulting issues which remain unresolved. Will the Leader of the Council commit to supporting Windlesham in establishing discrete representation for Windlesham Village residents in the future? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Marr. I am advised that the Leader of the Council will respond to this question.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Marr, for taking the time to come to Council and exercise your right to ask a question as a resident of the borough. You may not be aware, but this administration hopes to gain support from across the chamber tonight to increase access for residents to ask questions at as many council committees as possible to deliver a manifesto commitment in line with our accountability, community and transparency values. First of all, I am grateful that Councillor Wheeler, with the assistance from, Councillor Wilson, with the assistance from Councillor Wheeler, has proactively brought this issue to full council, and I hope it will receive broad support from across this chamber. I am acutely aware, as an adjacent ward councillor, of the unique and special character of each of the 6 villages, and especially Windlesham. which I remember well from my more youthful days, the details of which we will gloss over, through to working at the old BOC building for a period, and later bringing up my kids up on the tradition that is the Boxing Day charity pram race. I am therefore mindful of the feeling of village separation, loss of local representation, and discontent with the process followed, arising from the current electoral boundary status. Subject to the outcome of the motion, I would be happy to commit to raising the Windlesham boundary issue formally with the Boundary Commission and encourage them to consider revisiting the boundaries that they have determined. I will also respect and champion the outcome of the feedback from local residents, the parish council, and other local stakeholders as part of the formal consultation process that will need to be undertaken by the Boundary Commission. It may be that other smaller anomalies across the borough, such as a road of light water appearing in Bisley and West End Ward, can also be addressed in the same review. Thank you again, Councillor Marr, for your question and raising it on behalf of Windlesham residents.
Thank you, Councillor MacDonald. Councillor Marr, would you like to ask a supplementary question?
Yes, a short one, Mayor. Thank you. Sure. Okay. Does the leader realise how important reversing the division of Windlesham is to residents? The previous boundary review neglected us. Will the leader commit to ensuring our village is never neglected again and make the initial approach to the Boundary Commission within a reasonable time frame? Thank you.
Councillor MacDonald.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Marr. Yes, very happy to do so. I think, first of all, we all understand the discontent within the Windlesham community about the current status, and very happy that, subject to the agreement of our colleagues later on, my colleagues later this evening, that yes, we'll push forward with the proposal as quickly as possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor MacDonald, and thank you, Councillor Marr, for your question. Agenda item 4, my announcements. Members, you will be aware that former Mayor Charles Gimlett died in August this year. Mr Gimlett represented Watchetts Ward between 1976 and 1983, and subsequently between 1988 and 1999. He was Mayor in the 1996-97 municipal year, having been Deputy Mayor the previous year. On behalf of the Council, I send our condolences to his family and his friends. Moving on to my other announcements. It's been a busy 2 months, and I think between us, and thanks to my deputy, we've managed to cover all the appointments. If you look on the Mayor's Facebook page, you'll see most of the things on there, so I won't drag them out this evening. Once again, very impressed about the number of volunteers that we have in this borough and how lucky we are to have them. So thank you to all our volunteers. Tomorrow, I will be attending the RBL Poppy launch at Purbright, and in the evening, the RBL Poppy event for Camberley at Lakeside. And the other one I'd like to mention is that my civic service will be on the 21st of January 2024 at St Lawrence Church, Chobham at 3 p.m. Thank you. I'd like to invite the leader, Councillor Sean MacDonald, to make his announcements.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening and welcome, members. I have some announcements that I'd like to share with you and any residents watching us this evening. Firstly, as I commented on at last week's executive meeting, I, and I am sure all in this chamber, remain shocked at the terrorist attacks by Hamas on Israel and the mass hostage-taking. All we can ask for is that Israel's response takes account of the international rules of warfare in protecting from harm innocent civilians and ensuring provision of humanitarian relief to Gaza, whilst respecting peaceful Palestinians in the West Bank. Our thoughts go out to those impacted in any way and we hope in this darkest of hours for a pathway to sustainable peace emerging. At this difficult and worrying time for all linked to the region, it was comforting to receive such a warm welcome at the Camberley Mosque Open Day at the weekend, and to learn informally from Surrey Police that inter-community relationships remain positive within the borough, something we hope to strengthen through broadening engagement with all faiths and communities at the Camberley Remembrance Sunday event on the 12th of November, to which all are welcome. Starting with a more effective and inclusive council, I mentioned at the July meeting my intention to bring forward proposals through the cross-party governance working group to make the council's ways of working more progressive, not least in the language we routinely use. Later on, I'm delighted that we are considering proposals to introduce public question time at the start of each committee, with only limited exceptions. We are also proposing to make it much easier for our residents to bring forward petitions by halving the threshold needed to secure a council response. At last week's executive meeting, we also approved a new residents panel process to ensure all important issues to residents have an escalation path to this council. I hope residents will take up these opportunities to engage in the democratic process on areas of concern for them, and in turn help us make better and more relevant decisions to improve their quality of life. We are also proposing to strengthen the Audit and Standards Committee by giving it responsibility for risk management processes and oversight of treasury management functions, which is particularly important in these more challenging economic times with volatile interest rates and inflation. Conscious of the broad diversity of backgrounds and work-life demands on all members in this new council, as well as this administration's intention to proactively campaign for residents on issues of individual or group concern, we are proposing to adjust the council committee sizes slightly to make them more efficient and to make it easier for members to substitute for each other. Residents will be reassured to note that even after these proposed changes, your councillors will spend significantly more time in dedicated committees than any other council in Surrey, whilst having more quality time to engage locally in community issues important to you personally. Now, looking ahead to the future and next year, internally we have started our budget and service planning process. This includes the development of a new 4-year corporate strategy, incorporating the manifesto themes and commitments to residents of this administration, and a new medium-term financial strategy. This is particularly important given the difficult economic environment and the challenging national government funding framework in which all local councils operate. We can already feel the financial headwinds against us as a result of the unsettling international picture and domestic political uncertainty, which are likely to substantially impact fuel, material and energy prices, service cost and contractor rates, staff salary increase expectations, and our average interest rates paid on the inherited council debt mountain. I take inspiration that with the creativity of the senior officers and the commitment of the executive team, that we will find a way to navigate through this rough patch. Assessing a council's performance is a tricky process, so I'd like to put on record our thanks to the Local Government Association for the recent publication of our Corporate Peer Challenge Report, the first undertaken in almost 9 years and part of this council's commitment to improvement, openness and transparency. The report makes a number of positive remarks, including the council has delivered a number of positive outcomes for its residents. Surrey Heath has strong local partnerships in place. The council delivers high-quality discretionary services. Staff are friendly, enthusiastic and proud to work for Surrey Heath. Now that this report has been published, I want to commit to bringing forward shortly a detailed action plan with clear delivery dates. Once again, our thanks and congratulations to our Chief Executive Damien Roberts and his senior leadership and wider management team in achieving such a great result overall, not least in managing the Council's transformation over the last few years and driving a positive improvement culture. Farnborough Airport expansion consultation has now closed. The Council submitted a robust response through our planning portfolio holder, and I am aware that a number of individual ward councillors also provided detailed responses. One informed by a street letter survey to capture substantial local ward constituents' feedback. I just wanted to say a big thank you to everyone that has responded to this important consultation that impacts a number of wards and a large number of our residents' quality of life. Moving closer to my home now, I remain deeply concerned about the out-of-the-blue closure of the Bagshot Lightwater footbridge by National Highways, supported by Surrey County Council, and their feedback that this bridge may be removed before Christmas with a 2-year replacement timeline projected, as it is hugely disruptive for both wards' residents, given no sensible alternative route. We will continue to seek answers into the background to this decision, further mitigations for residents, and campaign for its urgent replacement. I was wondering perhaps if we can enlist the services and advice of Councillor McIntyre's old comrades in the Royal Engineers down the road at Minley to show National Highways how things can be done quickly where there is a will to do it. They certainly don't wait 2 years to replace a bridge when they need to in training, peacekeeping, or in action. And now my favourite part of leaders' announcements, where we get to recognise the commitment and celebrate the achievements of our council staff. Between now and Christmas, 3 more council staff will have reached their 10-year service milestone, based in the Family Support, Democratic Services and Camberley Theatre box office teams. We also have one next month who will be celebrating an amazing 20 years with the council, currently leading the Recreation and Leisure Services team. A big thank you on all our behalves and on the behalf of the residents for your long service and commitment. We are committed as a council to supporting staff with their professional development linked to delivering excellent public services for residents. And wow, how the team have been busy achieving since the last meeting. The highlights include a Certificate of Higher Education in Social Sciences in the Economic Development team, the award of Strategic Management in Modern Government and a Level 4 Diploma in Public Service Building Control with distinction both in the planning team, a Diploma in Local Government Law and Practice with distinction within Democratic and Legal Services, 2 Level 5 Diplomas in Early Intervention and Family Support in the Family Support team, and lastly, however not least in any way, and it's a signal of more development to come, a Level 2 Countryside Worker Apprenticeship with distinction in the Recreation and Leisure team. Congratulations on all your achievements. Mayor, members and officers of the Council, I hope you will indulge me finally in welcoming back to the Chamber Julie, also known as Councillor Hode. With Julie's permission, I want to pay tribute to her dedication to her council duties in committees, working groups and training sessions, albeit remotely, as she fought breast cancer these 6 months and more. To barely miss a meeting, always carry her fair share of residents' casework, support local lightwater groups, and encourage other group members is unbelievable. When you consider the trauma of a mastectomy, the challenges of radiotherapy and chemotherapy on the body, mind, and soul, all done with Julie's good, occasionally black humour. Welcome back, Julie. In reality, you never left us. Thank you, Mayor. That finishes leaders' announcements.
Thank you, Councillor MacDonald. Agenda item 6, declaration of interest. Do any members have any disclosure, pecuniary or non-pecuniary interest to declare in relation to the matters which are being considered at this evening's meeting? Councillor MacDonald?
Yeah, if I could just, sorry. Thank you, Mayor. If I could just declare on behalf of the whole Liberal Democrat group that one of the items we will withdraw for due to a non-peculiar interest.
Thank you. Councillor Wheeler.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd just like to declare that the motion being brought forward by one of the councillors pertaining to Frimley Park Hospital, I've recently been working there and my business provides services there, so I won't be taking part in any of that part of that debate.
Thank you. Councillor Garrett.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd just like to say a non-pecuniary interest in the item reference High Cross Church. I know the applicant quite well and I'm on various different trustee bodies with him.
Thank you. Councillor Rowlands.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Non-pecuniary interest in the Camberley District Jobs Hub, which is the next item on the agenda.
Thank you. Councillor McGrath.
Can I just ask for some guidance, because obviously with one of the motions coming up, because obviously with the Windlesham and Chobham ward, because obviously I have a business there.
Okay. Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, Councillor McGrath. Could you just briefly just explain what your business is, if that's okay?
I have a barber shop in the village.
So, based on what's proposed in the motion, in that it relates to boundaries, it's not my view that that has any impact on your business, and therefore it's too remote of an interest to require any action on your part. Okay.
Councillor Wheeler.
Thank you again. If we can just take out guidance, obviously those councillors that represent Bagshot Ward and the councillors that represent Chobham and Windlesham Ward would potentially be impacted by any boundary revisions. So I think we probably need to declare some form of interest, but given we're bringing forward and seconding the motion, certainly a couple of us, it's kind of difficult not to have an interest.
Thank you, Councillor Wheeler. So I'm comfortable with a declaration of a non-pecuniary interest, which doesn't require you to leave the chamber if your judgment is that you can continue and debate the matter with an open mind.
Could you also put me on that this list, please? Councillor Ormo.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I wish to make a non-pecuniary interest for item 736E. I am the applicant for Frimley Green Recreation Grounds.
No. Moving on to item 7, executive committees and other bodies. Executive minutes and recommendations. Members, you will see there is a revised recommendation for minute 36/E. Local Community Improvement Fund bids has been published. I understand that the Liberal Democrat group intend to accustom itself from voting on one of the elements of the decision at minute 36/E due to the application from High Cross Church being submitted by Mike Thomason. I therefore will take the minute and recommendation separately. Can I have a proposer for the executive minutes?
I propose the minutes of the executive of 19th of September and 17th of October 2023 to be received.
Do you have a seconder?
Thank you, Mayor. I second.
Are you happy to receive these minutes? Can I have a proposer for the updated recommendations to the Council from the minute of 17th of October?
We need to allow the Liberal Democrat
Yeah, okay.
to just take a minute for them to step away. So we can't count. That should be enough. Isn't it? Even with Sean off. Because he's declared an interest. I think we're fine. 10. Yeah.
Difficult. Can I have a proposal for the updated recommendation to Council for the meeting of the 17th of October for minute 36/E?
Yes, I'm happy to propose, Mayor. Can I just clarify, though, whether this is referring to the grant for the Frimley Recreation Ground, Frimley Green Recreation Ground, as well as High Cross Church, as both elements? And I reserve my right to speak.
Yeah, I think it was just for the
I
single
thought it
one.
was just for High Cross Church.
It's just like Australia. The other decision was taken by the executive, wasn't it? They're both council decisions. Mayor, can I assist with the Councillor Quinn's question? So the proposal relates to a decision on a bid, single decision, but as part of that decision to enter an item into the capital programme, which is a second decision, but they're both linked. Thank you, Mayor.
Sorry, I believe you need a seconder, then I'll speak.
Thank you, Councillor. Do you have a seconder?
Councillor Cope, your turn.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. I'd like to second this motion.
Members, are you happy to agree? He's got to speak.
It's okay. So they can speak to the item if they wish.
Yeah.
So if Councillor Quinn wants to speak.
I believe Councillor Quinn does want to speak.
Yeah, so
Thank
thank you, Mayor. Just a short explanation. So part of this request is a small request for SIL money, which is money available for non-parished parts of our borough, and it can be used to fund a wide range of possible infrastructure. This bid is for a relatively small amount. It's for 1,530, including VAT, to provide a public bike repair point to be situated at the front of High Cross Church, Knoll Road, Camberley. And the church will be responsible for the maintenance of the bike repair point after it's put in. Now, I'm happy to propose and support this bid on the basis that it will encourage people to travel to the town centre in the knowledge that they can repair their bike and pump up their tyres if that's required. The sum requested is not a large amount, and it represents a tiny amount of the over £300,000 of SIL money available for Town Ward. Therefore, I hope this bid will be approved. Thank you.
Anybody else want to speak?
Does anybody else want to speak on this? No? Thank you. Members, are you happy to agree the recommendation?
Thank you.
Can I have a proposal for the Planning Application Committee minutes?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd like to propose the minutes of the planning meeting of the 27th of July, 24th of August and 21st of September 2023.
Do you have a seconder?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I can only second two of those minutes because I was only present at two of the meetings, which is the minutes of the 27th of July and the 21st of September.
Councillor Kang? Councillor Kang? Yeah.
Yes, I'm happy to second that.
Thank you. Members, are you happy to receive these minutes? Can I have a proposal for the Performance and Finance Scrutiny Committee minutes?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm happy to propose the minutes for the Performance and Finance Scrutiny Committee for the 13th of September.
Do you have a seconder?
Councillor Noble.
Thank you. I'm happy to second those minutes.
Oh, she's missed a bit. Members, are you happy to receive these minutes? Can I have a proposer for the External Partnership Select Committee minutes?
Thank you, Mayor. I'm happy to move the minutes to the External Partnership Select Committee meeting on the 5th of September 2023.
Do you have a seconder?
Thank you, Mayor. I'm happy to second these minutes.
Members, are you happy to receive these minutes? Can I have a proposer for the Audit and Standards Committee minutes, please?
Thank you, Mayor. I'm pleased to recommend the minutes of the 3rd of October 2023, but I'm not happy about them.
Do you have a seconder? Thank you. Members? Members, are you happy to receive these minutes? Can I have a proposer for the Employment Committee minutes?
Thank you, Mayor. I'm happy to propose the minutes of the Employment Committee meeting of the 12th of October 2023.
Do you have a seconder?
Thank you, Mayor. I'm happy to second those minutes.
Members, are you happy to receive these minutes? Can I have a proposal for the notes of the Joint Staff Consultative Group? Councillor White.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm happy to propose the Joint Staff Consultative Group minutes for the 14th of September 2023.
Do you have a seconder? Thank you. Members, are you happy to receive these notes? Agreed. Moving on to item 8. Members, you will see there are 3 motions have been received for this evening's meeting. I will take them in order and they are included in the agenda. Motion 1. I would like to ask Councillor Richard Wilson to move his motion.
Thank you, Mayor. I wish to move the motion in my name and reserve my right to speak on it later.
Thank you, Councillor Winston. Do you have a seconder?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm happy to second that motion.
So, yeah, Councillor Wilson, do you want to speak to your motion?
Councillor Wilson, would you like to speak to your motion?
Thank you, Mayor. Mayor, councillors, in 2016 and 2017, Windlesham was wronged. The boundary review, which split the village in two, was an injustice. My motion asks for the council to request the Boundaries Commission to return to this and put the pieces of the village back together. I've lived in Windlesham for 23 years at 3 different addresses in the village. People who look at boundaries on a map would say that I've lived in both North Windlesham and South Windlesham. In reality, as all villagers know, these places don't exist. There is only one Windlesham. Windlesham has a strong community cohesion and sense of belonging among residents. It is not unique in that way. Other Surrey Heath villages, such as Bagshot, do too. However, Windlesham is unique because it has been split in two by the Boundaries Commission. There is great discontent among residents about the botched boundary changes. I know villagers who get visibly distressed when anyone says North Windlesham or South Windlesham. Despite the best efforts of all councillors, democratic representation of Windlesham has been deeply damaged by the split. There is a feeling in the village, that the village has been neglected by the council, that the community was divided and the pieces used as make-weights. The reason that Windlesham was divided and not other villages is that we were not consulted during the boundary review. Other parish councils did a good job of informing and involving their residents. Those in power at the time did not do so in Windlesham. Submissions were made to the Boundaries Commission from concerned residents in Chobham, in Bisley, in West End, but none were made from residents in Windlesham. This is because we were unaware of the review. The Boundaries Commission did receive a submission from Windlesham Parish Council and may well have thought that must be the views of residents. It wasn't. It is widely thought that the result of the review and the splitting of the village was a case of gerrymandering. The council had a large Conservative majority at the time. Windlesham has always been solidly Conservative, but there were a few opposition councillors left in Bagshot and Chobham. The widely held suspicion is that the plan was to move Conservative voters from Windlesham into these two wards in order to make them likely to elect more Conservative councillors. If that was the plan, it spectacularly misfired. Voters cannot be taken for granted in this way. At the recent parish council election, Windlesham Village only elected independent candidates. This would have been unthinkable before the Boundaries fiasco. One of these new parish councillors is Councillor Marr, who asked the public question earlier. Councillor Marr and her colleagues wrote to the council some months ago to express their support for my plan to ask for a new boundary review. These are the most credible voices in Windlesham to provide evidence for the strong feelings that residents have on this issue. It is constantly raised at public meetings and in conversations on the doorstep too. One of the values that all Liberal Democrat councillors were elected on is community. The community of Windlesham has been damaged by being split by the Boundaries Commission. This community now needs and expects our support. Residents of Windlesham were failed by the boundary review process. This kind of failure must never be allowed to happen again. As I said, the splitting of the village was an injustice. Requesting a new review where the views of the people of Windlesham are properly taken into account is the first step in righting that wrong. I would like to thank Councillor Wheeler for working with me on this motion and for seconding it, and I would like to thank Councillor Marr for asking her question. Councillors, please take the first step towards righting the wrong and showing the residents of Windlesham that they will never be neglected by the council again. Please support this motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wilson. Councillor Wheeler, would you like to speak on the motion?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yes, I would. I've had the joy of representing Windlesham, and I use the phrase Windlesham in the terms of the village for the last 4.5 years. It was very evident when we were first elected as independent councillors, Pat, myself and yourself, that Windlesham felt aggrieved by the split of the village. Having worked effectively with my fellow councillors in Bagshot, both before the last election and post this election, I do feel that Windlesham do have a voice that care very deeply about the village, and do just want to make that statement because I know that it is certainly something that all of the members of my group feel. That said, the splitting of Windlesham was enabled because Windlesham Parish Council represents Windlesham, Bagshot and Lightwater, and the Boundaries Commission are duty-bound to ensure that they don't split communities. And the community of Windlesham Parish Council, i.e. Bagshot, Lightwater and Windlesham, enabled, therefore, for Windlesham to be split without splitting what was perceived by the Electoral Commission as a single unit area. It was just basically subdivided, but there was no division of the people. And I think that shows a great lack of understanding of the community that Councillor Wilson has spoken about. We had quite a bit of debate when the motion was written about whether or not Windlesham residents were actually consulted. They were consulted. They were consulted in the way that the borough had to legally consult, and the Boundary Commission required us to consult with residents. There is a marked difference, however, in the way in which Chobham and Bisley were consulted. It would be somewhat politically of me to say that those communities were represented at the time by independent councillors. And independent councillors worked tirelessly with their residents and engaged with their residents and held meetings proactively with residents to ensure that our voices were heard and that our residents responded in a way to get the representation that they wanted to remain. If we look at the number of consultations, Chobham Ward had the most responses to the commission, the consultation, and that's Chobham Ward and all the other wards put together. So Chobham had more than all of the rest of the borough put together because they wanted to protect their representation. Some do definitely feel that the split of Windlesham and the movement of the boundaries in Old Dean and Bagshot were gerrymandering. It's not something I'm going to comment upon. It just seemed very coincidental that the main boundary areas that moved were those where there were alternative representation to the political group in power at the time. I'm very happy to second this motion. I do think we need to be aware as a borough that this can't change without the rest of the borough boundaries changing, because the Boundary Commission has to have a certain number of households and voting members represented within a 10% variance. Is it 10%? Yes, 10% variance of the voting numbers across the borough. So I definitely support this motion. I feel very aggrieved on behalf of the Windlesham residents, but we do need to be aware that this doesn't just impact Windlesham and Chobham, it impacts the borough as a whole. We did a huge amount of work. I think it was about 14 days' work on looking at balancing the numbers across the entire borough without impacting and splitting Windlesham. Unfortunately, that was ignored by the Boundary Commission at the time. Maybe they'd like to revisit the figures that we presented. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wheeler. I would like to invite members to discuss the motion and make any comments. Councillor Quinn.
Thank you, Mayor. So it won't surprise you that I'm not from Windlesham or Bagshot, but my first go at politics was standing at Bagshot, Windlesham and Chobham in 2021 with Councillor Wheeler and Councillor Wilson on the same ballot paper. And none of us were successful that time, but we're all here now, so how times have changed. How times have changed. Not for the county, yes. So focusing on the split, I think it's the most nonsensical boundaries that I've seen outside of the United States. North Windlesham is clearly not part of Bagshot. And clearly the people who design the boundaries know that because they go to vote at the same Windlesham polling station as residents from the west of Windlesham. They don't go to Bagshot to vote. And I thought one of the most gross parts of the election campaign, and I don't know if Councillor Wilson was aware of this, but he was accused at one point by some residents as not living in the ward that he represents, which is completely false. And this is because of an understanding a failure to understand among some residents that North Windlesham is part of Bagshot Ward. And so it's clearly a complete injustice that, he was accused of that. And I think the motion needs to pass. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Quinn. Any other speakers? Councillor Windsor.
You can move to the vote if you want.
Thank you. I would now like to move to the vote on the proposal. I would now ask for a show of hands unless anyone indicates otherwise. No? So we're voting on the proposal. All those in favour?
If I could please ask for a recorded vote.
Too late, isn't it?
And I have got a seconder for that. In fact, I've got quite a number of people that would support that. Thank you.
Yeah, so we'll take that, and then we need, I think, 3 members.
We'll accept that, Councillor Wheeler.
We need 2 more members.
And we need 2 more members to support that. We've got Councillor Wilson, Councillor McGrath, Councillor Wheeler.
Okay, so our monitoring officer will read out names.
Right, so the monitoring officer will read out your name and you will obviously make your vote.
Thank you, Mayor. Okay, councillors, so when I call out your name, if you'd be kind enough to confirm whether you are for or against, or whether you wish to abstain. Okay. So Councillor Alan Ashbury.
For.
Councillor Louise Ashbury.
For.
Councillor Cliff Betton.
For.
Councillor Johnny Cope.
For.
Councillor Kel Farnan-Cook.
For.
Councillor Lisa Farnan-Cook.
For.
Councillor Sean Garrett.
For.
Councillor Mark Gordon.
For.
Councillor Julie Hode. For. Councillor Nirmal Kang.
For.
Councillor Sabi Kang.
For.
Councillor Rob Lee.
For.
Councillor Sean MacDonald.
For.
Councillor Emma Jane McGrath.
For.
Councillor Lewis Mears.
For.
Councillor Sashi Malvaganam.
For.
Councillor Liz Noble.
For.
Councillor Jacques Olmo.
For.
Councillor David O'Mahony.
For.
Councillor Ying Pirret.
For.
Councillor Jonathan Quinn.
For.
Councillor Bob Rakes.
For.
Councillor Murray Rowlands. For. Councillor Morgan Rice.
For.
Councillor Pat Tedder.
For.
Councillor Josh Thorne.
For.
Councillor Kevin Thompson.
For.
Councillor Victoria Wheeler.
For.
Councillor Valerie White.
For.
Councillor Richard Wilson.
For.
Thank you, members. That was unanimous vote for the motion. Motion 2. I'd like to ask Councillor Jonathan Quinn to move his motion.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to move the motion in my name, and I reserve the right to speak.
Thank you, Councillor Quinn. Do you have a seconder?
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to second the motion and reserve the right to speak.
Councillor Quinn, would you like to speak to your motion?
Thank you, Mayor. I'm sure that every councillor across the chamber is now aware of the disgusting sewage odour which plagued Camberley for over a 5-month period from May to September this year. The odour caused by the Camberley sewage works run by Thames Water cannot be described as anything minor. It was so awfully disgusting and strong that many residents in my ward, as well as Watchetts, couldn't open their windows or hang their washing outside for weeks during the summer. I know residents who feared leaving their front door, and in only the second year since the peak of COVID, many cancelled family gatherings, barbecues and events due to the impact of the smell. The distress and impact on the mental health caused to residents in my ward and Watchetts has been shocking. Now, I'm not going to take up time by discussing the cause of the odour, as I'm sure if councillors are interested they can find information elsewhere, but because of its impact, I was pleased when Thames Water agreed to meet with myself, Councillor Rowlands, Councillor Farnan-Cook, Mr Stevens and our MP to discuss the issue of possible compensation that could be given to the community to make up for a missed 5 months of going outside. Since the odour prevented people spending time outdoors, we believe that money for a community project, such as the children's playground in St Michael's, could be a goodwill gesture from Thames Water. We suggested this proposal to them at the meeting, and I was happy to see there was a meeting of minds. They agreed to the idea in principle, and we left the meeting with the strong impression that the only outstanding matter was the exact amount of money that Thames Water would donate for such a project. Well, Mayor, rather than agreeing to meet with us in person again, as anyone who's read the motion can now see, Thames Water have since backtracked on their offer to make a financial contribution to a local community project in an email they sent to us on the 12th of October. I'm absolutely disgusted and disappointed about the disregard that is shown to not just us as councillors, but to the residents of Camberley. This motion calls on Thames Water to honour their previous commitment to make a financial contribution to a local project, and I hope it represents some accountability for our residents, since the government have failed to regulate water companies effectively. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Quinn. Councillor Farnan-Cook, would you like to speak on the motion?
Thank you, Mayor. First of all, I'd just like to thank Councillor Quinn for bringing this motion to full council. It's a motion that I'm very pleased to second. From February last year, excess sludge from sites across the region was imported into Thames Water's site here in Camberley. The site sits literally on the border of St Michael's and Watchet's wards. Between February and April, more and more sludge was brought onto the site, and let's be honest, what we're talking about is raw human sewage, which was just stored in vast open tanks to just fester away. And as the weather warmed up through April, May and June, as you can recall, it was quite a warm springtime, the sludge began to produce a very unbearable odour. And based on the mapping of the complaints we received, we estimate that the impacted number of residents was about 11,000, and that's based on complaints received between May and September, a period of 5 months which included the school summer holidays. That's 5 months of people feeling sick in their own homes, being unable to open windows, not wanting to let their children go out to play in their gardens, not being able to hang out their washing to dry, cancelled birthday parties and family events. And I don't want anybody in this chamber to underestimate the impact of that. It was significant and it was wide-reaching. As you would expect, and as most of you have seen on social media, the complaints flooded in. Numerous meetings and site inspections were undertaken, and our environmental health officers spent many hours trying to ensure that Thames Water met its promised deadlines for processing the sewage, and that the odour control measures were operational on a 24/7 basis. It was no mean feat, and I'd like to thank and commend the officers for their commitment and determination to find resolution for the residents of Surrey Heath. Given that the site wasn't sufficiently resourced to process the sludge in the first place, that many of the promised timescales weren't met, that we were at times misinformed, and that there's been a complete backtrack on the intention to acknowledge the impact on residents by contributing to a community project, I hope that the whole chamber will support this motion this evening, and we can welcome Thames Water into this chamber at external partnerships and ask them to reconsider their contribution towards a community project. It's my belief that this is the least the people of St Michael's and Watchet's deserve. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Finan-Cook. I would like to invite members to discuss the motion and make any comments. Councillor Wheeler.
Mine is very quick. It's actually just for guidance. I have a non-pecuniary interest in that my mother and my sister were both impacted by the odour, so I just need to declare that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So sometime in June, our officers were doing a good job, and local councillors trying to make contact with Thames and receiving predictable replies, and appeared to be getting absolutely nowhere. Thames had barred entry onto their site, and being a cheeky fellow, I drove up and was able to get entry. I met some of the actual workers on the site, and they were the ones who disclosed the fact that Thames had been drawing raw sewage from the whole of the region and bring it onto site. This was obviously, clearly, Thames had sought to disguise this was actually happening. And of course, you talk to people, local people in the area, who do have to say that Thames have a long and dubious history of polluting the area around them. And one has to recognise that Thames, as a privatised company, had a major interest, had the major interest of shareholders in Australia, and I think it's now moved to Canada. And so we have to say for our people, the people that suffered, and it's been well discussed, they were suffering in interest of people, investors overseas, who were benefiting from the way that Thames had behaved. We had a situation, due to some excellent work by local councillors and our officers, that for 2 meetings, Michael Gove attended. And at the end of the last meeting, as Councillor Flynn described, we received an uncategorical promise that Thames would compensate for the weeks of stink in the middle of quite a warm summer so that people couldn't go into their back gardens would compensate in the form of providing a children's playground. So, rather satisfied with that, we left, and lo and behold, about a week later, arrives a letter from Thames backtracking, reneging on that agreement. I think we've asked our officers whether that promise, witnessed by all of us, really was a legal commitment, and that has to be, I think, analysed. But the situation is, we left that meeting quite sure that Thames were going to compensate the relevant people in both St Michael's and Watchers for the disturbance they've had. A disturbance that made you thought twice whether you went into your back garden because the stink was so cloying and inevitable. And I think this council ought to take action, because who knows, having got away with it once, Thames might not be back next summer and act in exactly the same way. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Bones. Anybody else like to speak on this motion? Councillor Garrett.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just a short one from me. Obviously, I don't live in the area, but I know from all the posts on social media that there's been a lot of hardship from the relevant wards. All I would suggest is, if we actually are able to get some money from Thames Water, which it sounds like is the least they could do, that it is ring-fenced to be used only in those two wards and not to be used anywhere else. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Garrett. Anybody else? Councillor Lee.
Thank you, Mayor. Very, very welcome to Thames Water to come and attend external partnerships. We have a meeting on the 28th of November, and I'm very happy to extend an invite to anyone that the councillors proposing a seconding motion believe appropriate, and we'll chase them down to attend.
Thank you. Councillor Quinn, would you like to exercise your right of reply?
Thank you, Mayor. Just to say something, they did promise to come to external partnerships, so they did make that commitment too, but knowing them, they might try and go back on that, so yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. I would now like to move to the vote on the proposal. I would like to ask for a show of hands unless anyone indicates otherwise. Then we'll have a show of hands of those in favour of the motion.
That's unanimous.
Thank you. That's unanimous, Council. Motion 3. I'd like to ask Councillor David Amani to move his motion. I will invite you to speak on the motion once you have been seconded. Thank you, Councillor Marty. Do you have a seconder?
Thank you, Mayor. I second this motion and reserve the right to speak.
Councillor Marty, would you like to speak to your motion?
Residents online, councillors and officers. We have a very busy schedule this evening. With that in mind, I'll keep this in short, as its importance is already self-evident. Frimley Park is an integral part of the local community and Surrey Heath life, and is known as a centre of excellence nationally and internationally. The experience my family and I have had within the hospital has been exemplary. The professionalism, care and support provided was so important to us to get through some of the most arduous times, and is something we can never thank them enough for. I'm sure this mirrors the experience of many within the borough and further away, and it's something that we all want to continue. The hospital's central location has allowed it to work closely with the Ministry of Defence and the huge benefit of residents, hospital and military personnel, and enhance the important close relationship the borough holds with our military service. I could extol the virtues of the foundation all evening, but I'm sure you're all acutely aware already. The motion I present outlines some of the many benefits the borough receives from its relationship with Frimley Park Hospital, and I urge you all to support it.
Thank you. Councillor Omani. Councillor Kang, would you like to speak on the motion?
Thank you, Mayor. Councillor Omani. I have the privilege of having one of these, actually. It's a bus pass for pensioners. Now, I use this for, travelling on buses 1, 2, 3, 11, 500, X94. All buses would stop at Frimley Park Hospital. You know, Frimley Park Hospital is a central hub. Imagine if Frimley Park Hospital wasn't there. All this infrastructure will go. As Councillor David Omani points out, distance and time is important. It's important to the health of Surrey Heath residents. Let me share a personal experience, one of emergency medical need. My cousin brother came on a short visit to my house. He suffered a sudden heart attack. Now, without thinking, I didn't call an ambulance. I drove myself and my cousin brother down to Frimley Park Hospital within 5 minutes. Now, that really, with the medical care, the excellent medical care, he's living today. Without that doorstep facility, he wouldn't be here. So it's absolutely crucial to the residents of Surrey Heath that we have this first-class emergency service on our doorstep. What are the other reasons why Frimley Park Hospital should stay in Surrey Heath? Well, healthcare professionals are attracted to this locality, with many residing in this area and their school children, offspring, going to local schools. High number of care homes around Frimley Park Hospital, reliant on its local services, provide employment beyond the immediate health professionals at the hospital. Furthermore, high number of local business services and suppliers to Frimley Park Hospital. Now, relocation of this major hospital would be a big loss of skilled healthcare professionals and their families, decrease in local transport infrastructure, although this is provided by Surrey County Council. Surrey Heath Borough Council is not responsible for, but I can see that if it were to happen, then there would be a decrease in the local transport infrastructure. There'd be a local decrease in employment, training opportunities for both low and high skilled workers. Think of the loss of current hospital staff who would move out, or even likely to be hit with higher transport costs just to go to work. So especially difficult for health workers on low pay grades. So I, with David, urge all members here and Surrey Heath residents to support and actively engage with this motion to ensure this central healthcare service landmark is not lost to the detriment of all Surrey Heath residents. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor King. I would like to invite members to discuss the motion and make any comments. Councillor Quinn.
Yeah, so a very brief point, but I've heard some people refer to this hospital, this planned hospital, as a new hospital, but at best it's a replacement hospital for Frimley Park, and at worst it's minus a hospital for Surrey Heath if the new hospital doesn't exist in Surrey Heath. I really think, though, I'm not proposing an amendment to the motion, but I think we should really suggest also that the existing site where Frimley Park is based is used for some new health infrastructure in the future, and it doesn't just enter the private market. Perhaps a new GP surgery or even a brand new hospital would be great for that location. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Quinn. Councillor Louise Ashley. Asprey, sorry.
I'll keep this brief. Thank you, Mayor. I have had connections with Frimley Park Hospital for many years, both personally and professionally. I worked as a nurse in the operating department for several years, and I must say that I was always amazed and inspired by the dedication of my colleagues to serving the health needs of our community. It is not just the surgeons and clinicians that are responsible for the excellent care provided by this hospital, but the whole team, including housekeeping, care assistants, porters, paramedics, vital diagnostic teams, and of course, we nurses. On several occasions, I was part of the whole team called upon to save lives following serious road traffic incidents on the M3. The fact that the hospital is close to the motorway saved vital minutes in getting these patients the life-saving surgery they required. The committed and selfless team of staff has grown up around the hospital at its current location, and I believe it would be difficult to replicate this team should the hospital relocate to another site outside of Surrey Heath in the short term. Therefore, this motion has my full support. The current dedicated workforce at Frimley Park Hospital deserve to remain employed within a world-class facility that is easily accessible for them, and the residents of our borough deserve to keep this beacon of hope close to their homes. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Asprey. Did I see your hand up, Councillor Betton? Councillor Cope?
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you for all the comments which I'd certainly associate myself with about the successes and importance of Frimley Park Hospital. I really hope this is something that all political parties can work collaboratively on, and I'm interested to see what the contents of the letter that is referred to at the end is going to say, but I'm sure it will be in that spirit. I think we should note the leadership already shown by our MP Michael Gove on this. He made a statement on 13th of October via Facebook, which I think broadly supports almost everything within this motion, and he is fully committed to finding another site for this hospital within Surrey Heath. So I hope we can work collaboratively and on a cross-party basis, because I think there's support from all sides of this chamber.
Thank you, Councillor Cope. Anybody else would like to speak? No. Councillor Marnie, would you like to exercise your right of reply?
I'd just like to thank everybody for their positive comments. Thank you.
Thank you. I'd now like to move to the vote on the proposal, and I will ask for a show of hands unless anybody indicates otherwise. All those in favour?
That's unanimous as well. Unanimous.
Thank you. That was unanimous.
Somebody bring Councillor Wheeler back.
Could I ask Councillor McGrath to please bring Councillor Wheeler back? Probably gone into the members' room, I should think. Mind you, I suppose we all had an interest, really, because I mean, lots of us have used the hospital.
All of us. I think everybody in the room. But she was.
Agenda item 9. I'd like to invite Councillor Richard Wilson to introduce the report of the Governance Working Group and to move the recommendations therein. Before I hand over to Councillor Wilson, I would like to bring to your attention that the proposed changes of committee sizes will be discussed at item 10 of the agenda. Please can I ask you to leave any debate on the matter to when we get to item 10. Councillor Wilson, would you like to introduce the item?
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, I wish to propose the recommendations in the report for item 9 on the agenda. Council, agenda items 9 and 10 do go together and form an overall package of changes. Some measures in item 9 are designed to complement item 10, so please bear that in mind. I will now address agenda item 9. First of all, I'd like to pay tribute to all of the members of the Governance Working Group, councillors and officers, especially the Democratic Services Manager. I'm proud of the work that we've done and the recommendations we have produced for Council. I'm also proud of the way we have done it. Rigorously, respectfully, in good faith, driven by the democratic will of the electorate, informed by evidence, and always with the aim of improving the processes and governance of the Council in the interests of residents. The aims of the recommendations in this agenda item are to engage with and empower residents, to tighten control of risk, to improve effectiveness of committees, to reduce unconscious gender bias, and to tidy up and clarify certain small points in the Constitution. It was very pleasing to hear the public question asked earlier. However, it is a rarity. The recommendation would expand public question time to most committees and the executive. There will also be a facility for members of the public to ask urgent questions submitted on the night of the meeting. This was a Liberal Democrat manifesto pledge. The recommended changes to the petition scheme cut the number of signatures required by 50%, improve the responses in each tier of support levels, allow petitions from third-party websites, and explicitly state that petitions can be used to ask the Council or Executive to review a decision. This was also a Liberal Democrat manifesto pledge. Regarding the protocol for the appointment and role of honorary free persons and honorary alderpersons, the recommendation takes advantage of the amendment to the Act, which relaxed the male-only gendered terms to some extent. Although some gendered terms remain, only those absolutely required by the current law are used. Gender terms are being removed as each section of the Constitution is revised. Unconscious gender bias was noted by the LGA in the recent peer challenge as an area for improvement in the Council. It is recommended that the Audit and Standards Committee be renamed Audit, Standards and Risk. Treasury management would be transferred to this committee to spread workload more evenly. There are some other text changes to clarify the committee's role, and most of these are minor in nature. It is recommended that the quorum proportion be increased. This will ensure an adequate number of attendees at slightly smaller committees. A concession was offered by the administration regarding the recommendation on the Appointments Subcommittee. All opposition group leaders will be entitled to attend. The Employment Committee will gain the power to nominate councillors from outside the committee who will be eligible to sit on the subcommittee. This is to provide a larger pool of potential subcommittee members. Currently, only nominated substitutes can stand in for absent committee members. It is recommended that if preferred substitutes are unavailable, then any qualified councillor from the same group can substitute. This mitigates the higher quorum proportion. There are many other corrections, tidying up and removal of gendered language generally. Although many of these changes recommended could be described as housekeeping, together they add up to much more. A thorough spring clean and reorientation towards engaging with and empowering residents. This was long overdue and is driven by the desire for change expressed by the electorate in May and June. As I said, agenda items 9 and 10 go together. Please approve them both, councillors, starting with this one. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wilson. Do you have a seconder?
Thank you, Mayor. I'm very happy to second this report from the Governance Working Group. And I'd also like to thank all the members of the working group and the officers who support it. Those on the group will attest to the wide-ranging debates that we have and the diverse opinions presented leading to this report. As Councillor Wilson spoke in his introduction to the report of item 9 on tonight's agenda, it seeks to bring new protocols and procedures that will improve the inclusivity of the council and the efficiency of the committees that we sit on and the engagement that residents have with this council. I specifically want to endorse the changes to the petition system. During the time that I've been a member of the council, I can only remember one petition that's come forward that was led by councillors Kell and Lisa Fine and Cook at the time to save the Watchmore Nature Reserve, and a successful petition it was. When a petition is done well, it can capture the mood of the residents and give us on the council a real steer for decision making. So opening up the process and lowering the threshold is something that I wholeheartedly support. There are a number of other provisions within this agenda too, which Councillor Wilson has already introduced, and I provide my full support for all of them. Members, I hope that you will join me in supporting this item. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Rise. Members, do you have any comments? Councillor Cope?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just have a quick question on the petitions element, because I currently have a petition running around an issue on my ward. Will this be retrospective for petitions that are already live, or not?
We'll ask the monitoring officer for his comments.
Thank you, Mayor. The changes to the proposed scheme won't be retrospective. They will come into effect when the constitution is changed, and obviously the council needs to make that decision tonight. So your petition was submitted under the old scheme. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. My question relates to that point. If we agree tonight for these governance changes, when will it affect the Constitution and when will they come into effect? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Garrett. So the changes come into effect immediately. Okay.
Any more comments? Is that agreed, members? Agreed. Thank you. Item 10. Review the committees and political proportionality. Before I hand over, I have been asked to clarify that if these changes are agreed, it will be effective from the 1st of December 2023. You will also see that the supplement circulated with nominations does not include the Liberal Democrat group's nominations. These will be agreed before the 1st of December using delegated authority. The final list of committee memberships will be circulated once agreed. And I would like to invite Councillor Richard Wilson to introduce the report and to move the recommendations therein. Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, I wish to propose the recommendations in the report for agenda item 10. The Council's standing committees are overpopulated. This is making them less efficient and effective than they could be. When compared with other boroughs and districts across Surrey, Surrey Heath typically has more places on comparable committees and fewer councillors to sit on them. Analysis of directly comparable executive system councils in Surrey shows that Surrey Heath has 54 places on planning plus licensing plus scrutiny. This is higher than any other council, despite the fact that Surrey Heath has the second lowest number of councillors on the council. 154% of our total councillor strength is on these four big committees. The next highest council has 105%. This means that we would have to cut our committee numbers by a third to get down to the next highest council. Another way of thinking about this is the average Surrey Heath councillor spends 50% more time in committee meetings than councillors in the next highest council. This anomaly was probably created over many years, for example, when the number of councillors was reduced from 40 to 35. The recommendation is to reduce numbers by about 20%. Surrey Heath will still have the highest number of committee places per councillor. Some councillor time will be freed up for attending executive working groups and other councillor activities. Cross-party executive working groups are a valuable way to involve councillors in policy development. As the leader said in his first address to council, Liberal Democrats do not believe we have a monopoly on good ideas. Working groups can be held online, so councillors with caring, family, medical or work issues are far more likely to be able to attend. This is very important for our ambition to be fully inclusive. Other councillor activity includes attending public events, meeting residents in their homes and working on casework. Residents value these activities far more than having their councillor sitting in an overcrowded committee meeting, unable to contribute due to the large number of attendees. This recommendation reduces numbers on 5 of the 6 standing committees. Political proportionality is maintained. However, due to rounding, all opposition groups will be slightly overrepresented and the Lib Dem group will be slightly underrepresented. The Governance Working Group will not be politically proportionate. A concession was made by the administration to have all opposition leaders and 4 Lib Dem councillors on the group of 7. The Joint Staff Consultative Group, councillor side, will not be politically proportional. Only 3 of the 6 councillors will be Lib Dem and all opposition groups will be represented. Slightly smaller committees will improve the running of committees. All councillors will still be able to attend any committees in the same way they currently can, question and contribute to decision making and speak up passionately for their residents. All committee papers will continue to be available to councillors through modern.gov in the same way as currently. To avoid any confusion or cost involved in reissuing already published committee agenda packs, it is expected that the changes to committee compositions will take place around the 1st of December. The inescapable fact is that Surrey Heath's standing committees are 50% overpopulated compared to the next highest council in Surrey. This is wasteful of resources and reduces time available for valuable councillor activities. Even after this small reduction, we will still spend more time sitting on committees than any other comparable councillors in Surrey. The administration has made a point of sharing and delegating power and pushing power down. The opposition will be overrepresented. The chair of the Governance Working Group is normally the leader of the council. Instead, a backbencher has been asked to do it. Opposition group leaders have added involvement in the Appointments Subcommittee and the Governance Working Group. My sincere thanks go again to the members of the Governance Working Group for their patient hard work in producing these recommendations. Please support this agenda item and help get the council back in shape and fit for the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wilson. Do you have a seconder?
Thank you, Mayor. I'm happy to second the proposals as set out within the report. Councillor Wilson eloquently set out the intention of the proposals as brought by the Governance Working Group. As detailed by Councillor Wilson, councillors in Surrey Heath have a significantly heavier workload than councillors across Surrey. I know that we all work hard and we all do this willingly, but to be required to spend more time on committees when compared to equivalent councils does seem to be an unfair work-life balance that other councils seem to have already addressed. Therefore, in addition to Councillor Wilson's comments, I'm very happy to second this report. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Rise. Do we have any comments, members? Councillor Wheeler, then Councillor Garrett. Councillor Garrett.
Thank you, Councillor Wheeler. Mine is, again, quite a short one. I asked a question about when the governance would change, which I was told would be once we voted on it. My concern is, I know you've said that it will change as of, but we've got a planning committee tomorrow, and we've got no planning committee. So is it going to be 11, or is it going to be 7? Sorry, who are your members? Because according to the list, there are no members on that group right now. So just clarification for tomorrow's meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Garrett.
Mayor, in response to the question, the membership of the committees will not change until the 1st of December, and so the existing committees will continue until then. Thank you.
Councillor Wheeler?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I've made no secret of my opposition to these changes. I'm actually very proud that as a councillor, it would appear that I work harder than fellow councillors in other boroughs. And I was elected knowing what the workload was. I hold down a full-time job. I no longer have young children, but I still have children. I have a reasonable social life. I play sport. I run my own business, and I feel that given that we were re-elected, we must be a fairly efficient and supportive ward councillor as well. I spend, I reckon, about somewhere between 40 and 50 hours on business per week for my ward. It varies, obviously, from time to time, and it depends what we're doing. And I stood for election knowing that and on that basis. I hear that you feel that the opposition parties have a higher percentage of representation. Actually, as an independent council group of councillors, we actually now have slightly less. I have concerns. People won't know the history of some of the committees. One of those is the Employment Committee that came about to make sure that the council could not find itself in a position whereby pay awards and other matters had gone ahead without the appropriate scrutiny. The number of members that are on that committee is, in my opinion, very low, and it's certainly lower than those at Guildford Borough Council in terms of the same percentages. The licensing committee is another area for concern. Although the numbers go down, and although I accept that anyone can sit as a sub on those committees, both planning and licensing require additional training. So in order for people to be able to sub on those committees, they would have to commit in advance to attend those meetings. I did ask the leader of the council what the benefit was of reducing the numbers. And I have to say, from my point of view, and maybe he'd like to respond this evening, I didn't get a satisfactory response. There is no reduction in cost. So our agendas are sent out electronically. The members are, on the whole, not paid. The officers have to come into the meetings anyway as they need to attend. So there's no reduction in cost. In terms of a meeting running more efficiently, for me, a meeting runs efficiently when there is impassioned debate and when there is debate within the chamber, and some of the numbers here and some of the representation here is going to make that very difficult to happen. At a recent employment committee meeting, virtually everyone was mute. I say virtually, and also I'm slightly surprised by the comment that was made that it will allow for better debate and better participation and for members to be able to have themselves heard. I have to say that's never been a problem for me, and I certainly felt perfectly able, having read the papers in detail, to be able to ask and to ask comments based on the papers that come out. So I definitely won't be supporting this. I think it is a step backwards. I think it shows a lack of involvement, a lack of engagement. And the great thing is that from certainly from independent councillors' point of view, in most cases, we attend all meetings, whether we're part of that committee or not, and we have the opportunity to speak. So thanks, we'll have more time. But I definitely don't agree with it. It's a step backward. And my feeling is that the only reason it's going forward is because the majority group is struggling to get enough members to sit on the committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wheeler. Councillor Mears?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm sure everyone here appreciates the busy nature of balancing council life with everything else that goes around us. Saying this, I think it's incredibly important that we keep the richness of debate that we've had in this chamber so far. Rich debate works hand in hand with a number of people, bringing in a wealth of knowledge and opinion to debate. The reduction of committee members is a detriment to that. Something worth highlighting in my view is that the majority political group of this council has the worst attendance statistics at expected meetings, missing almost 20% of meetings. So I think we need to consider about ways we can incentivise and get those people engaged before we start cutting committees as they are. Thank you.
Councillor Cope?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Like I'm sure everyone who stood for election in May, I stood and fortunately was elected because I want to contribute to this the running of this council. And I feel that that ability to contribute is being reduced by what is being proposed here. Councillor Wilson referred to us having spending 50% more time in committees, etc. I think that's a badge of honour. I think that shows that we're doing something right. We're doing something better than other councils in Surrey. So I'm really disappointed by the reductions. And the leader mentioned a committee that I sit on, Audit Standards and now Audit Standards and Risk, and he said it's one of the most important committees going forwards. So it's hardly a surprise that the administration has increased its numbers on that committee, even if they have evened it out elsewhere. I think the excuse given in this paper is quite weak, the idea of freeing up time. I mean, these committees happen at most once a month. Some of them are once every 3 months. If you can't set aside 2 or 3 evenings a month to attend committees, I really question why you stood for election. And I think Councillor Wheeler absolutely hit the nail on the head. The reason that this is being proposed is because the administration can't fill their seats on the committee. And I think you can see that because every other group has put forward their names of who's going to be on the committees going forward, and all the Liberal Democrat ones are to be confirmed. And I think that says a lot.
Thank you, Councillor Cope. Any others? Councillor MacDonald.
Thank you, Mayor. First of all, to answer Councillor Cope's question, it's basically because I haven't got around to doing it yet, but that's just the reality of the situation in terms of putting the names into the different places. This administration does not have a problem getting councillors onto the different committees. We have had a few absences for a number of reasons, medical reasons, which we touched on earlier, and obviously some people taking a step back to recharge their batteries going forward. These changes allow us to campaign more, something that we feel passionately about as Liberal Democrats, and you've already seen that come through very strongly with Councillor Wilson's extensive consultation with respect to the issue of the bridge between Bagshot and Lightwater, or as we touched on earlier, Councillor Feenham-Cook's and Councillor Rise's activities fighting the Camberley stink, or indeed the extensive consultation that Councillor Whitcroft's, in fact both Councillor Whitcroft's, organised in terms of the Farnborough Airport expansion. We envisage that those things will continue and that we wish our councillors to have time to spend on them. Let's get some perspective, members, and look at these changes from the opposition's viewpoint. All groups of the opposition will be overrepresented versus the rules of proportionality. In Audit and Standards, the Conservatives will be reduced by 1 member, but they are still represented. In Governance, there is no change, and all groups are represented. In Employment and the Joint Staff Consultative Group, the Conservatives are reduced by 1, but are still represented. Similarly with the Joint Staff Consultative Group. The Independents are reduced by 1, but remain like all other groups represented on the Feeder Committee, the Joint Staff Consultative Group. And many concessions were made to ensure their inclusion in all the subcommittees as they wish, and other groups, both in word and in spirit. But let's also remember, from an opposition perspective, planning, no change. Licensing, no change. Performance and finance, no change. External partnerships, no change. So for the big 4 committees, which make the major decisions for our residents, there is no change from an opposition perspective. As Councillor Wilson talked about, after these changes, councillors in Surrey Heath will still spend 25% more time in committees than the next council in Surrey. I commend these changes to the Chamber. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor MacDonald. Anybody else? Councillor Wilson, would you like to come back?
Yes, thank you, Mayor, and thank you to all the councillors who contributed to the debate. I think it was an excellent debate. It was very useful. Councillor Wheeler said she's proud to work harder than any other councillors in Surrey, but it's not about working harder, it's about achieving more. That's our motivation here with these changes. Councillor Mears talked about the richness of debate, and the question on that, Councillor Mears, is that at the moment we've got so many people on some of these committees that people just aren't able to contribute. If 15 people all tried to talk on each planning application, it would be impossible. But thank you for the input on that. And I think Councillor Cope's question on the administration being unable to fill seats, I think, has been answered by the leader. And the leader also set out the very small changes and reductions in the number of the opposition councillors on each committee, including the big four committees having no change to opposition numbers at all. And it's very important to note that regarding the employment committee, we did make, the administration did make concessions, but also the Joint Staff Consultative Group tends to be the feeder onto that, and there will be no Lib Dem majority on that group, and every opposition group will be represented. So I think we've gone above and beyond to deal with any of the queries that have been brought up there, and thank you, councillors, again for the debate. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. I would now like to move the vote on the proposal. I will now ask for a show of hands unless anyone indicates otherwise. Councillor Garrett.
Wait, Madam Mayor, can we have a recorded vote, please?
Have we to...
I'd like to second that.
Councillor Wheeler.
And I'm happy to third it, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Mears.
Thank you, Mayor. So as with the previous recorded vote councillors, when I call out your name, if you'd be kind enough to confirm whether you wish to vote for, against, or whether you wish to abstain. So Councillor Alan Ashbury.
For.
Councillor Louise Ashbury.
For.
Councillor Cliff Betton.
For.
Councillor Johnny Cope.
Against.
Councillor Kel Finan-Cook.
For.
Councillor Lisa Finan-Cook.
For.
Councillor Sean Garrett.
Against.
Councillor Mark Gordon.
Against.
Councillor Julie Hode. Councillor Nirmal Kang.
For.
Councillor Sabi Kang.
For.
Councillor Rob Lee.
For.
Councillor Sean MacDonald.
For.
Councillor Emma Jane McGrath.
Against.
Councillor Lewis Mears.
Against.
Councillor Sashi Malvaganam.
For.
Councillor Liz Noble.
For.
Councillor Jack Olmo.
For.
Councillor David O'Mahony.
For.
Councillor Ying Pirrit.
For.
Councillor Jonathan Quinn.
For.
Councillor Bob Rakes.
For.
Councillor Murray Rowlands.
For.
Councillor Morgan Rise.
For.
Councillor Pat Tedder.
Against.
Councillor Josh Thorne.
Against.
Councillor Kevin Thompson.
For.
Councillor Victoria Wheeler.
Against.
Councillor Valerie White.
Against.
Councillor Richard Wilson.
For.
Okay.
Nine against. 21.
Yeah.
921.
920, yeah.
The motion was carried with 21 votes for and 9 against. Thank you. We move to item 9, and I will ask the Chief Executive to read his comments.
Thank you, Mayor. Members, as you're aware, Councillor Julie Hode has been unable to attend meetings in person due to matters outside of her control. This item was included on the agenda as it is the last scheduled council meeting before the 6-month lapses since Councillor Hode has been unable to attend meetings in person. You'll of course be aware that she has attended many meetings virtually during this time. However, I'm pleased to advise, as you've heard earlier from the Leader of the Council, that Councillor Hode is present at the meeting and there is no longer a need to consider this item of business. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Item 12. Questions from councillors. I can advise that one question has been received from councillors. Councillor Murray Rowlands, would you like to read out your question?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Given the problems and delays with the Royal Mail affecting residents in Surrey Heath, what is the council doing to increase the pressure on Royal Mail to improve their performance? And is the council leader confident that when the council sends letters to residents that they will actually arrive promptly, if at all, in some cases, and on time?
Thank you, Councillor Rowlands. I'm advised the Leader will respond to the question.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Rowlands, for your important question. The Council has written on 3 separate occasions to Royal Mail since May this year about the poor performance of the Postal Service and has still not had an adequate response. Given the performance issues, these letters have been sent by email. While I'm not sure how Councillor Rowlands distinguishes between letters arriving promptly or on time, there certainly does appear to be delays in letters posted through the Royal Mail Postal Service getting to their recipients. It is perhaps time to ask the Chair of the External Partnership Scrutiny Committee if he would formally invite a senior representative from Royal Mail to attend and feed back to the committee the steps they are taking to improve the performance of the postal services in Surrey Heath and to answer members' questions. Thank you, Mayor.
Yes, Madam Mayor. Just to make the observation from talking to our local posties to the effect that the Post Office reaction to the situation is to make their existing workforce work harder. In other words, they have a crisis in manpower and they're asking the existing workforce to actually spend more time and work harder. And I have to say that because I think they in the past have done a real service for this community. And it's a shame that this is actually happening. The figures that actually show that Surrey Heath is among a lot of authorities experiencing the same problem. And the criteria is that rather than achieving about 95% effective postal delivery, it's running at about 75% nationally, and I think we're in the same situation. And I think most of us have the experience of our post arriving in clumps, possibly at the end of the week, if you're very lucky. And that is obviously affecting anything we actually send out as an authority as well, with delays. So I think I'm pleased that we're going to carry out this effect, but I would just ask that perhaps we ought to think about the people actually doing the job, our local postie, and perhaps contacting the Post Office Workers Union as well and indicating our sympathy with the situation.
Thank you, Councillor Rowlands. Would the leader like to respond to the question?
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you for your follow-up, Councillor Rowlands. I think you're right to highlight the excellent service that the posties in all our different areas across the borough do us. Certainly, I have had the same experience as you, which is it's a lumpy post. It comes in batches. I'm sure my colleague here will consider your supplementary point on inviting trade union representatives, and if so, we can have a wider conversation about what's going on within the Royal Mail Postal Service. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor MacDonald, and thank you, Councillor Rowlands, for your question. Leader's question time. I would now like to invite members to ask questions of the leader, Councillor Sean MacDonald, on issues relating to executive functions. Please be aware that there are 20 minutes is allocated to the leader's question time. As usual, so everyone can have a chance, I will try to ensure all members have an opportunity to ask a first question before I invite you to ask a second question. So if you have more than one question, please prioritise a first question. Please keep your introduction to your questions as short as possible so we can hear as many questions as possible. Can I now have the first question from members, please? Councillor Lee.
Thank you, Mayor. Leader, as Chair of External Partnerships Select Committee, I'm having a spot of bother getting someone from Surrey County Councils who looks after highways to pop along to my committee to chat about the plans for potholes. The most recent communication appears to have declined my kind offer. Could you perhaps offer some advice or comment? I do have a second question in relation to Councillor Cope's motion, petition, sorry. Could I possibly ask that as well? It's a very brief one. Cool.
Councillor MacDonald.
Thank you, Mayor. It is indeed sad that Surrey County Council representatives have decided not to turn up to external partnerships despite several months' notice. It is an issue of deep concern to our residents, the services they provide to us, and specifically some of the potholes we have to endure, especially as we go into winter. I also find the response slightly strange, given that I was in a meeting recently where the leader of Surrey County Council alluded to the fact that their transport representative had been to an adjacent borough to address specifically these types of issues, and indeed had offered to ensure that that would be replicated across the other boroughs as required. So we seem to have a discontinuity between the words and the deeds, and that will be something I'll need to follow up on. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor MacDonald. Any other questions for the leader? Councillor Garrett.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I also have two, but I will ask my first one first. I have cut this short, or tried to. I am glad to see the official press release that has been issued last week about the corporate peer review. Within the feedback report, there are a number of areas which were identified that needed to be reviewed moving forward. In the review are certainly the reason for doing peer reviews like these, and obviously we'd like to work with the administration to help with that. I note the press release that the leader states the LGA peer team were invited as an important part of our commitment to continuous improvement. I also note some members of your group claiming that this was something the new administration organised. In fact, at the executive in July 2022, the then leader asked officers to organise this for summer 2023, with potentially a new intake of councillors. The papers are available for anyone that wants to see them, and they are in the public domain. As stated in the feedback report, peer challenges are delivered by experienced elected members and officers. The makeup of the peer team reflected the focus of the peer challenge, and peers were selected on the basis of their relevant expertise. The peers included a 151 officer and a deputy 151 officer. With this in mind, it is interesting that there was no mention from that Surrey Heath was on the brink of bankruptcy, which is what we have been led to believe. Who should we believe? These financial experts who've carried out a full peer review, or the lead of the council who seems happy to make financial statements off the cuff? As a part of your continued wish to be open and transparent, may I ask that any comments that suggest a peer review was put in place by the new administration be corrected in any official council releases and posts? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Garrett. Councillor MacDonald.
Thank you, Councillor Garrett. I think to be consistent with what I've said previously, credit where credit is due. So thank you for alerting us to the details of how the peer review was set up. As far as I'm aware, but I'm happy to go and check, Councillor Garrett, in the council press release, I don't believe it did allude to the fact that this was set up by the new administration. It alluded to the fact that it had been completed and it was a thorough investigation of our processes and our strengths and our weaknesses. And as you highlighted, some areas for improvement. So very happy to give credit where credit is due. In terms of the detail of that, I will check it and come back to you in due course. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions for the leader? Councillor Thompson.
Like myself and many others in this chamber, I'm sure you couldn't have helped but been impressed by the fantastic new facilities at the Leisure Centre at Lightwater Country Park when we visited their relaunch event a few weeks ago. Indeed, more generally, Lightwater Country Park is a real jewel in the Surrey Heath crown, visited regularly by residents from across the borough and beyond. Less impressive, however, is the poor condition of the access road that passes through the park up to the Leisure Centre. With winter upon us and the potential of additional vehicular traffic due to the closure of the M3 footbridge from Windlesham, the condition of this road surface is only going to deteriorate further in the months ahead. What commitment can you make this evening that you will seek to find or explore new ways to raise the funding necessary to make material improvement to this road surface? Thank you.
Councillor MacDonald.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Thompson, for your question. Indeed, I think many of us enjoyed that evening, afternoon/early evening across the chamber. I think there were a few bubbles involved. I have been made aware of some really eye-watering numbers with respect to the replacement, the permanent replacement of the surface of that road. It's certainly something that we need to look at because its condition is not great and it's been patched up year after year after year. It's a task that we share with the facility. But I'll certainly take away your point that we need to see how we could do better, and maybe we could look at phasing it over a number of years to try and deal with the worst bits first and move on over time. But I think your point is well made that with the issues of the access bridge across from Bagshot that we're all acutely aware of, there will be more vehicles going in and out of there, which in turn is obviously not great for some of the surrounding residents, but it's particularly not great as we go through winter on that road. Thank you for your question. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Leader. Is there anybody else got a first question? No. Councillor Garrett.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This one's a lot shorter and is not related to finances. I think you might have been in the planning application meeting recently where we discussed Lawrence Lodge. And we were told that it was fit for purpose, etc., etc. As Councillor Finnan-Cook will have seen from a recent email received literally this week, that there is a resident that is living in a room where, having moved the bed, there is mould and there's cracks and all this sort of stuff. So I would ask if it's possible that we could recontact Accent to make sure that this building is still fit for purpose in view of the planning application being extended for another 3 years before it's actually built, to make sure that the people living in there are actually living in a proper facility. Thank you.
Councillor MacDonald.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Garrett. Indeed, I think I went on the record as saying I was feeling quite queasy about approving that particular proposal at planning. It was a slightly complicated one because of the information we were being provided with. They seem to be contradictory, but not from a planning perspective, but from other perspectives that you're alluding to. So I think we will take that action very much away and work through the officer team to see how we can engage with Accent and see if we can get some improvements made. Especially as I think from memory we extended it for another 2 years. Another 3 years was it? Yeah. So we definitely need to see what statutory powers we have, but also what influential powers we have to make sure those people are living in decent conditions. Thank you, Councillor Garrett.
Thank you. Councillor Lee.
Thank you, Mayor. Leader, whilst it's unfortunate that Councillor Cope's petition starts under the old rules, it completes on December the 15th, clearly under the new rules. Would you support a brief item approving it under the new rules, given the next council meetings on the 13th of December, 2 days before his petition completes, if it doesn't reach the appropriate number? So technically it would operate under the new rules.
Councillor MacDonald.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I think it's very important that we try to see how we can include petitions raised in a legitimate and fair manner, and we will certainly work with the officers to see what procedural processes we can put in place to achieve the objective of Councillor Cope's petition, and then obviously deal with it in the appropriate way in due course. We want more of those sorts of things so that we can bring the residents into this chamber. So thank you, Councillor Cope. Thank you, Mayor.
Councillor Wheeler.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Is the leader familiar with how usual it is for a decision that is made at full council to be delayed before it is implemented? Thank you.
Councillor MacDonald.
I'm not aware. Thank you, Councillor Wheeler.
Councillor Wheeler.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just wondered, from a constitutional point of view, if the monitoring officer would like to come in. I'm fairly familiar with the Constitution. I couldn't find a direct guidance on it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wheeler. So the council is free to determine when any constitutional changes can and will come into effect. They don't necessarily have to come into effect immediately if the documents and the proposed changes expressly state there's a date that the changes will be made.
Do you wish to raise a point of order, Councillor Wheeler?
I would like to raise a point of order, please. I don't see in the papers that came forward for the council meeting this evening a desire to expressly defer the decisions that were made this evening around the representation within the various committees. Perhaps a monitoring officer, sorry to put you on the spot, could come back on that. But my understanding is that if a decision is made, it should come into force unless expressly expressed that it wouldn't, which it wasn't.
Thank you. The monitoring officer will be back to you shortly.
Thank you, Councillor Wheeler. It's purely because meetings have already been summoned in accordance with procedural requirements. and the publications made by Democratic Services. So those dates are already set for meetings, and the changes that we are making will give effect to the meetings that have already been summoned. Okay.
Yeah, that's fine. These are, this is a question of the leader. This is leader's question time. Just asking if this is a question.
Councillor Garrett.
Sorry, it's off the back of Councillor Wheeler's. Sorry, Madam Mayor, and I'm a little bit confused now, which is why I asked the question in the first place. So, under the latest information we've got, it's saying because we've got the schedules of those meetings, so we've got schedules of meetings right up to May of next year, unless I'm very much mistaken. So, are we saying that it's not up to May next year, but it's as of the 1st December, although that wasn't explicitly mentioned in any of the papers? Now broken.
This is leader's question time, so I'm not sure whether the leader wants to take this or whether the monitoring officer. Donald.
This is supposed to be leaders' questions, and we seem to be debating the detail of the Constitution, which should have been debated during the relevant items. So I would suggest that the relevant members are out of order.
Thank you. Any more questions for the leader? Councillor Wheeler. Oh, sorry, Councillor Quinn.
As someone who put my lawyer hat on, as a councillor who supported the change to committee sizes, I do have to say the report does expressly say this revised scheme of proportionality would be adopted for the remainder 2023-24. I just think, does the leader not agree with me that, precise wording of this should mean that the changes take effect immediately, and that is should be the correct interpretation. Otherwise, it should have, as someone who supported these changes. Thank you.
Councillor MacDonald.
Thank you, Councillor Quinn. I take advice as everybody else from the officers, and no concerns were raised around the delay of the committee membership. Had that been, it would have been addressed. So I think the monitoring officer has already given guidance on his perspective. Should he wish to comment further, then it's down to himself.
In item 10, I believe it says I've been asked to clarify that if these changes are agreed, and this is what I would have read out, if these changes are agreed, it will be effective from the 1st of December 2023.
So the decision's been taken.
So the decision's been made. Councillor Garrett.
I specifically asked my question of the monitoring officer before we got to number 10, because I knew we were coming to number 10, and I wanted to make sure I had the facts. That's why I said, when does it come into effect? At 8 and 9, and I was told.
Thank you, Councillor Garrett. Item 9 came into effect immediately. It was item 10 that comes into effect on the 1st of December.
Councillor Wheeler.
I am sorry, this is the last point. My understanding is that the point is whether the 1st of December was within the agreed final wording of the motion. If it wasn't, then my understanding is that it should come into effect immediately.
Councillor MacDonald.
Perhaps, thank you, Mayor. Perhaps I could just clarify. I thought it was a report to council, not a motion. Is there a difference in terms of how it's dealt with? Thank you.
Mayor, the officer advice has been given. If any member has any further concerns about it, I would suggest that they take that offline. Thank you.
I suppose it's 20 minutes up, isn't it?
Not yet. Not after 20 minutes.
Just one further question for them? There's just time for one further question for the leader if there's anybody who has a pressing question. No? Then that concludes the business of the meeting, and I would like to thank everyone for attending.